was wondering if you remember your like early experiences with music, or if you played any instruments, or like if music was big in your household growing up.
Yeah, music was pretty big. My father is a jazz author and had befriended this very famous jazz bass player named Milt Hinton, Milthinton, and eventually would write a book about him and do a documentary about him. And Milt Hinton was special because he played with all the jazz greats like Tab Calloway and invented slap bass.
Oh
But
wow.
also during his career, he took photographs for wherever he went. So all during the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, he had all these incredible, not just jazz photographs, but when they would tour of the South, he would take, photographs of segregation stuff and all that. And so he was around in my life a lot when I was young. So I got a taste of like jazz and going to jazz concerts and like being backstage with Dizzy Gillespie and stuff like that.
Oh wow.
And then my dad was pretty into other music also. And I remember the first album I probably got was the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. And I remember kind of memorizing all the words with my sister and my dad. So it was, not a crazy music household, but it was definitely there.
Mm. And did you play any instruments before you got into DJing?
Not really. I tried the violin real quick, but I was terrible.
Mm.
So no real instruments.
And do you remember around what age you got into hip hop?
I got into hip hop in fourth grade. So whatever age you are in fourth grade, is that like 10 or 11?
Mm.
In school, in the library, they had those, turntables and then you could plug like 6 different headsets of headphones into them. So my friend Adam was like, check out this album, and it was Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five's greatest hits. And so we would all sit around and listen to that album. And that was like my first taste of hip hop. And then my mom moved to New York when I was in sixth grade. So we would go out to Coney Island, and I would hear like they used to play. There would be a DJ in the rides, like a roller coaster, and then there would be a DJ. And I remember hearing hip hop then, and I guess it either like captivated you or it didn't. I remember just being in love with it from the first time I heard it.
Mm. And when did you start thinking about like DJing or like beat making?
What'd you say? What did I start off with?
When did you like start thinking about that kind of stuff?
Oh, I think very early, like Eon and I were both going to be MCs, and we did like a talent show in ninth grade or eighth grade, even at Friend Select, where we went to school. And I realized very quickly that I wasn't a very good rapper. So then we would go to those shows at the Spectrum, like in 87, 86. And I remember just going and probably watching the Beastie Boys and seeing Hurricane, like scratch and stuff like that, and seeing the setup of the techniques still in the anvil cases, and then that wooden Gemini kind of like propped up in between them. And it's just like that setup kind of made me fall in love with DJing.
Mm. And do you? Sorry, go ahead.
And 1200s were so expensive, I mean, not compared to now, but $400 seemed,
Yeah.
unretainable. So I worked at Foot Locker for a whole summer in the gallery and saved up and saved up and saved up, and was able to get 2 techniques. And that was like, I guess, the beginning. This is probably 87-ish.
Oh wow. Yeah, because I know Eon has that line 86. We made our group up. I wasn't sure if I've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, real long time. And we just like recorded demos on and off all through high school, and would perform in the talent show, but never really took it that seriously. And then went to the same college and kind of still did it. I mean, I was taking DJing seriously and starting to do clubs and stuff. And then what really spiked our, confidence and thought that maybe we could do it was Bobito from Stretch, and Bobito came up to Boston University where we were going to school. He was hosting a party or something, and he heard Eon Ron and said, "Hey, why don't you come down and do the Stretch and Bobito show in New York?" So that really gave us like, oh, maybe, we can do this. And then we started doing promos for them on the radio,
Oh, wow.
intros and promos for them to play. So that was like kind of our beginning of like getting heard by, people on the radio.
Mm. And did early on, did DJing have a big effect on your beat making or like the style of beats you wanted to make?
Yeah, I was a club DJ first, so I kind of always had that in mind when I would make beats even early, even though everybody wanted to be Premier and beat rock and like make a really good beat and have a scratching chorus and stuff. I was kind of always aware in the back of my mind, kind of, what might work in a club, or, I think that's what like B-Boy Document is kind of about. Like, it's an underground record, but like the beat could kind of be commercialized or played in a club.
Mm. Excuse me. And you went to Boston University, you said. You majored in communications.
Yep.
Were you already were you thinking about doing something else in music, or you were just like, that's what you felt like doing at the time, I guess, or?
Yeah, I mean, I went to film school within the communication school, and that was pretty much because I didn't really have like proper music schools, but I kind of knew what I wanted to do from 16 on. So even when I was at BU, I actually chose BU over Wisconsin because I really liked the record store. The record stores in Boston when I went to visit. So I was just full mode obsessed, I'd say for the first 2 years of college, I was in battle mode, and I was battling other DJs in Boston, and then I kind of started going to the clubs in Boston, even underage, and saw the DJs rocking like the parties and the college girls, and I said, wait a minute, maybe that's what I want to do. So I guess if I had never made that switch, I'd probably still, be in my bedroom, trying to perfect my scratches.
Did Philly have much of a scene before you left?
Well, yeah, when Ian and I were in high school from '86 to '90, and that was the golden era of Philly hip hop, where you had Jeff and Fresh Prince and Three Times Dope, and Steady B and Schoolie D. So we really felt like we were a close second to New York. And then I guess in the early '90s, they pulled hip hop off the radio for a little while, and that kind of made hip hop really dormant in Philly for a while until Beanie and them came back along, and that kind of re-spiked the interest. But I remember there was like a really downtime for hip hop in Philly.
And I guess I mean even were you and Mr. Yon two of the only guys that you knew that were like real into hip hop or like making music, or like did you hang out with like a lot of other people as well?
Well, Friend Select, believe it or not, was very kind of diversified. So, even though we were it was a little bit taboo still in '86 and '87 and '85 for white kids to be into hip hop. There was like enough kids at Friend Select that, were more into hip hop and had come from like, Germantown or North Philly and stuff like that, outside areas. We grew up in Center City, but I think we were really diversified early kind of to different cultures, and that definitely played a part.
And I believe if you look at the High and Mighty Wikipedia page, it's just kind of says like there's a spot about sports, a spot about Star Wars, and that's basically it. I was gonna ask if those two things were also something you guys were always into, or if you were into.
Oh yeah, I mean, Star Wars definitely dominated our childhood. Um, like it came out in '77, right? So we were born in '72. So I feel like you can understand a movie when you're 5. So maybe we were the first year born that like saw it in the theater and could really understand it.
Mm.
And then sports was just like a huge thing in both our lives, and I think it probably shows in our music. You know, like Ian and I were never really like out to be something we weren't. You know.
Yeah.
My dad was a sociologist at Temple University, and like, you know, my mom taught at NYU, and you know, I come from like an educated background and stuff, and same with Eon, and like, you know, in our music, I don't think we were ever kind of trying to be something we weren't. You know, most of the references are sports and pop culture and stuff, and it's not really like saying like we're something that we weren't.
Yeah. And since with the Philly thing, you also you know, made sure you paid homage to the city. You know, with whether it's like Illadelph Jack move or like That's What's Up. Even
Right.
like he has that.
Seems like a good idea at the time.
Well, it's like you know, I walk by the Funko Mart every day. Well, it's a car stereo store now. Like I would have had no idea that like that even existed because like my age or whatever. You know what I mean? And then like hearing that line, I like looked it up and I was like, oh, that's that store I like walk by every day.
Yeah, we just walked by it when I was home this past time, and Eon's like, I want to write an article about those stores, and I think that's a great idea for like being flyer or something. And, like you show what it is now, and then like you show a picture of it back in the day, because that's really was a huge influence on us. That Chestnut Street, Market Street stroll, where you could just go down there and the kicks at Eigelberg's and the records at Armand's, and it was just like this very kind of incredible experience, urban experience, really. Like, and it was, you know, there was no whack records on the wall. You would go into Sound of Market or Armand's, and like every record on the wall would be like EPMD and Public Enemy and Beastie Boys, and you know, these classic records. So that was definitely a huge influence on our early hip hop kind of morphing.
Another thing seemed to be a big influence or like big part of your work is comedy. Like sample Blazing Saddles, sample The Simpsons multiple times.
Right.
With stuff like that, you know, when you're like, were you just like taking samples and like saving them for later, or like, you know, you just happen to be listening to something?
Yeah, I think a little bit of that, a little bit of just remembering movies that were very influential. You know, all the Mel Brooks stuff was, you know, huge in my household, and was a huge Simpsons fan for years. So it was almost like any sampling thing. Like you would be out and you would hear like you're watching an episode and hear Lisa Simpson go like, "We got beeps," and you'd be like, "Wow, like I gotta use that." You know, so I think it's just like stuff that would stick in your mind to use. And of course you're gonna like pull them from the things you're watching a lot or listening to a lot.
And obviously other groups have done it and stuff, but I feel like you guys use it a lot, use it well. You know, you'll sample Eon will say a line and you'll like sample another rapper to like finish that line. So I was gonna say,
right.
Did you guys work together as a group a lot, like writing songs and like, or were you kind of like separate?
Well, that was like one of my favorite things in the hip hop that came before us, was like the sampling of lines and DJ songs, and we made sure to have a DJ song in all our albums, and that was a huge thing. We loved, like, you know, the sampling of a line and bringing in early NWA was like that, and stuff like Mr. C's Got a Master Plan from Big Daddy Kane's album, Aladdin's on a Rampage from the Low Profile album. So So that was one of our favorite things in hip hop, was to sample the line and have it finish the line. And I think on those songs, like, we would pick out the hip hop lines we wanted to sample, and then Eon would write around them, actually. So I would put in the line, and he would say, "Okay, let me, write the line that goes with that hip hop line."
And how did you end up coming up with your name? Excuse me.
With High and Mighty?
Yes.
Eon actually came up with both High and Mighty and Eastern Conference records. Eastern Conference is obviously just like a homage to sports. And High and Mighty was, a weed-friendly name. He was the high because he smoked so much weed, and then I'm Mighty Ma. I guess it just came to him, just like a kind of weed-centric name.
And I heard in an interview, you said, like, by 18, 19, you were DJing pretty steadily.
Yeah, I would say freshman and sophomore year of college, I was still kind of into the battle thing. And then I would go home a lot to New York. By that time, both my parents had lived in New York. My mom moved to Brooklyn when I was in 6th grade, and then when I went to college, my father also moved to New York. They were both from New York. But when he wasn't teaching at Temple anymore, he also moved to New York. So I would go back to New York like on spring break and Christmas break, and my friend who I grew up with, John Schechter, who started The Source, would have these Source parties in New York, and I saw Stretch Armstrong and Clark Kent and these New York DJs rock parties. And up until then, I was kind of like a hip-hop snob. Like the 90% of my record collection was all hip-hop records. And I would love R&B records with, Soul to Soul and stuff like that, but I wasn't really up on dance classics or reggae. But when I went to New York and would see Stretch rock a party, he would play tons of reggae and tons of classics. So I said, man, I really got to get my shit, expand my genres. So I think between sophomore and junior year of college, I spent the summer in Brooklyn staying at my mom's house, and I was just practicing 10 hours a day and going out and getting the records I needed to get. And then I think that was a big kind of jumping step for me on rocking parties.
Wow. Do you think moving to New York was like a key part, like important? You know what I mean?
I think so, just because that's where the whole scene was happening. I think we could have done what we did living in Philly, but I think our Stretch and Bobbito kind of connection really helped us in that burgeoning underground hip-hop scene that was happening right when we got out of college. It was like the timing was right. And then I befriended LP from Company Flow and kind of started putting guys on records, and people ended up liking our first 12-inch, and it just kind of expanded from there. And
that was about around the time of you came out with the Eastern Conference, like 96.
Yep. I think November 96 was the first High and Mighty single. And then a couple of months later, we put out the Eastern Conference All-Stars with, Philly rappers, Rashid and Ill Advised.
I guess that just must have been a very interesting, crazy time. A couple of years.
It was just, I was kind of balancing being a New York club DJ and then like making records. And maybe I used the money I would make from DJing to kind of do what I needed to do to put the records out. But, it was, I was also doing like bootleg remixes at the time. So, the D&D All-Stars, I would take like the acapella and I would put all the artists' familiar beats behind them. And then we would sell those out of Fat Beats and Rock and Soul. And I did the Aaliyah bootleg with Mad Skills and those guys, and like would deliver it to Funkmaster Flex, like the DAT and stuff. So there was like a 3-year period where I was really like kind of in tune with New York hip hop, and did a Ghostface Killer and Mary J. Blige remix for Epic. I was just kind of seeing what was working in the clubs, and then kind of also had my thing with Eon, but they connected somehow.
Mm. And then 99 you put out Home Field Advantage. Looking almost 20 years later, looking back, what was it like to make what's like more or less considered a classic hip hop album?
Um, I was acting as producer and executive producer at the same time. Like it kind of it started off as just maybe doing a song with LP and Bobito, and then we went on this tour in '97 over to Europe with Pharaoh Monch and the Arsonists and the Jig Masters, I think they were called, DJ Spinner's group.
Mm.
And got back to New York and did Dirty Decibels with Pharaoh. And then Alchemist was like this kid at NYU, and I got introduced to him, and he produced Open Mic Night and a couple songs on Home Field Advantage. So it was just like it just kind of naturally happened. And then we had the same manager as Eminem, so that's how that song happened. And so we had actually finished the whole album before we got signed to Rawkus. So had this finished album, basically. I mean, I think we did a couple more after we got signed, but there was actually like this little bidding war for a second for us between them and Tommy Boy. And we were about to sign to Tommy Boy, and then Rawkus came in and was like, we'll give you a whole label deal. So we were like, wow, we can't pass that up. We knew then we could put out the Smut Peddlers also. At that time, the first Smut Peddlers single was out, One by One, Cage. So, it was like a no-brainer.
Mm.
And it was like a really exciting time. It was like we had worked really hard. We were both very dedicated to getting better and making songs. And that was kind of like the payoff, getting a deal, and especially a label deal, because then we knew we could kind of put out other artists that we were working with. KM1 from the Artifacts. And at that time, being on Rawkus was like a big deal. They had like major label funding, but they were just independent, which I don't think will ever happen again,
Mm.
So then we had already done B-Boy Document, the original version, and Rawkus was like, why don't you remix it and put it on Sound Bombing? And so they kind of used the song to promote Sound Bombing, but then also our album. And that was a little sketchy, because we felt like we should have a proper single for our album also. So that caused a little bit of friction, but I only have good things to say about those guys. They did more for me for my career than anyone else, so I only have love for Rawkus. That was kind of like the thing you did back then when you wanted to break up with a label. It like had to be hostile. That's the way people left labels. It couldn't just be like, okay, cool, good luck with you guys. You had to have like this meeting at the label where like it almost comes to blows.
How did if you remember the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 come about?
Which one?
Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 having B-Boy Document used in it.
We, I guess, had a publicist at Rawkus actively working things, but then we also signed a publishing deal with a company in LA called Bicycle Music. So they would actively go out and try to place your songs and stuff, obviously, so they could recoup the publishing deal. So one of them got that for us, probably the Bicycle Music.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and you mentioned Smut Peddlers. I wanted to ask about your thoughts. Well, first, between that and like other high and muddy stuff, did you ever find yourself in like hot water with like political correctness issues? Like, I know obviously Eminem like got some shit, but did you guys yourselves?
Uh, I guess when we recorded the Eminem song, like things hadn't really gotten out of hand with Cage. I don't remember. It was just like a lot of the beef that other rappers around us had wasn't necessarily like part of us, you know, like even though Cage was with us, it's not like we grew up with Cage and had like this, you know, this crazy like unbreakable loyalty or whatever. Like I just was trying to make a hot album, and that's why there was other producers on it, and that's why on some of the songs I had other people scratch on them, because like I said, I was like half executive producer, half producer. So I just wanted to make the best possible album I could make, because I know your debut album is really, that's what it's about, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes I would get criticized for having a song with Cage and Eminem on the same album, but then in a way it was kind of cool. But yeah, I've had many rap beefs in my career and don't miss that shit at all.
Actually, even meant more like, because there was that time in the media where like Eminem kind of got in a lot of trouble for who, you know, just like saying certain things. So it was like, and like obviously, Smut Peddlers and High and Muddy's made some, like I remember having an Eastern Conference Records DVD that I somehow came upon when I was like 16.
Right.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you's had any like blowback ever, just for like your raunchiness or whatever.
I mean, I don't think I'll show my future kids the video with R.A. the Rugged Man. Looking back at it now, you know, that was kind of in then, like shock rap, and it's just funny because there's like so many rappers doing it now, and I'm just like, damn, we did that shit 15 years ago. But no, like political, like blowback. I think the biggest controversy we had was there was already like a punk rock group called Smut Peddlers, which we didn't really know when we came up with the name. So like they started to like come after us. But that's about it.
Yeah, because like I follow you guys on Twitter or whatever, and like you both seem like quote unquote like pretty liberal guys. So I was kind of surprised when I like found you both like later on, you know what I mean, like on social media or whatever, and I was like, oh, they seem like pretty normal guys compared to their like personas.
Yeah, for sure.
And was that a lot like with a lot of the guys, like just persona kind of stuff? And do you think that's like often difficult for fans to like understand that you're not the same person like on stage or on a record?
Well, like I said before, like it was important for us to not have lyrics that were not true. Like I don't think Eon's ever had like a thuggish type of line, because that's not what he's about, you know what I'm saying? But as far as like Smut Peddlers lines and talking about girls and all that, you know, I don't think we're really like male chauvinistic guys. So yeah, I would say Smut Peddlers was a little bit of a persona thing, but that's probably it. I think Cage's first album is very true to who he is. I think the High and Mighty is. Yeah, but I mean, I think sometimes people meet me and they're like, damn, like you look different and you're a Vegas DJ and all that stuff. But like I always tell people, like I was a club DJ before I was in the High and Mighty. Like that was kind of like me returning to my essence.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was a little younger at the time, but there was certainly some music all kinds of stuff, you know, different labels or whatever, where I was like quick to be like, oh, that's like Sell Out or like this and that. And then like as I got a little bit older, I was like, oh wait, like I get it now, you know.
Right.
So like I imagine there's more like blowback from fans than like your peers, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like my friends who I grew up with, they pretty much know who I am. You know.
Mm. You mentioned like LP and Alchemist, Eminem. When you knew those guys, was it like were they the type of guys that you could just tell like these guys are going somewhere type of thing?
Yep, I've always said that about Alchemist. Like he and I would sit in the studio and make beats for 5 hours, and then I would go to a movie with a girl, and he would stay in the studio for another 5 hours.
Oh,
And
wow.
I feel, especially with producers in hip hop, like you have to put in that time. And it's not a glamorous thing. Like it's not fun to work on a snare for an hour. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a glamorous thing to make a beat. The payoff is glamorous, but he definitely had that dedication. I think LP and Eminem are just extremely talented. I think Eminem's association with Dr. Dre made that a no-brainer. And I think LP's had the last laugh, you know? Like Run the Jewels is like one of the biggest things in music.
Yeah. And then the reverse of that, were there anyone that you knew where you were like, this person's gonna be huge, and just it never happened?
Where I thought they were going to be huge?
Yeah. Like just like any artist that you can think of that like probably like nobody knows, and you're like, oh, there's like this tape or something.
Oh, like they didn't blow up, but I thought they would?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, in the Stretch and Bobbito movie, they asked that to Bobbito, and he says Cage is like the number one person who he thought so.
Oh, really?
I guess I felt that way, too. I think Cage is as talented as anyone. And I even think Copyright in his prime was like really, really good. People don't blow up for many reasons. It's kind of got to be like all the stars are aligned for someone to blow up, even just to make one hit. It's like the song is only half the battle. So yeah, I've seen many people who like had the talent to do it, but for some reason or other, family situation, their own hang-ups, their work ethic. There's a lot of people who kind of doesn't happen for those type of reasons.
Mm. So you've been DJing in Vegas at
Yep, the past 10 years.
Surrender Nightclub and Encore Beach Club. Is that...
Yeah.
Yeah. How is that?
It's crazy. I've seen like the whole evolution of the scene in 10 years. When I first got out here, I was the main slot time guy, and nobody cared about who the DJ was. They just cared if the music was good. And then the whole EDM explosion came, and I got moved to the guy who like kind of plays before Calvin Harris and Diplo and the Chainsmokers. Mm. And so I saw it go from nobody cared who the DJ was to everybody coming into the club, and the second they come in, they run in front of the DJ booth and just stare at the DJ all night. There's no social interaction. There's no mingling. There's no picking up of girls. It's just 2,000 people staring at someone play music all night.
Wow.
I almost want to get on the mic some nights and say, hey, go mingle amongst yourselves. Because when I came up in New York clubs, it was just all about that. Like, you would go to the club to talk to people and dance with girls, and there's none of that anymore. So it's kind of interesting to be DJing to people half my age and to kind of see it for what it is, but also still be able to get by rocking the party. I try to rock the party these days without playing the stuff that's popular these days, the trap music and all the noisy music. I came up where you didn't play any loud music. The loudest part of the night would be like some Prince guitar solo, but the key was to not play noisy music. It was to play, pretty smooth music. And now it's the exact opposite. Like, you're not considered to be rocking it unless there's like a build up and a breakdown and a build up and a breakdown. and like that's not even dance music to me. Like, how do you even dance with a girl to that? So it's kind of disappointing to see the direction it's gone, but in a way, it's kind of flattering that I'm still able to do it. I know it's not going to last that much longer, but I'm still enjoying being on stage, you know, and I'm at the nicest casino out here, so that makes it cool.
Mm. Yeah, I seen in an interview or heard in an interview you mentioned getting to like open for like A-Track and Diplo, and I just thought that was pretty crazy. You know, because you guys are kind of like three boom bap. You know, Diplo had like Hollertronics or whatever.
Yeah.
And now it like seems so different, you know.
Yeah, and that's kind of cool when these guys come in and they know who I am, you know, because for every one who knows who I am, there's 10 guys who come in who have no idea who I am. So it's fun, like when someone like Foster Thomas comes in and they're like, "Oh, you're Mighty Mouse from the High and Mighty. Like, we grew up on your shit." Like that happens very rarely, but it's cool when it happens. But yeah, like A-Track is a straight up hip hop dude, and we even did shows with him in Montreal, High and Mighty, Eminem, and the group he was in.
Oh wow.
So it's cool to see guys who do know their music blowing up now. Because like it's kind of corny when a guy comes in and you know he only knows his own lane. He has no knowledge of music. He got lucky making a hit in his bedroom, and now he's making $100,000 an hour to DJ, but couldn't do anything else but do his lane, you know? To me, like, a good DJ is someone who adapts to the party and look out on the dance floor and say, "Oh, tonight it's a private party for some convention that's in town. Maybe I should be playing George Michael and Michael Jackson instead of loud trap music." But none of them make that switch.
I haven't been there yet, but you recently played Noto Philly.
Yeah.
And I've seen they have a lot of, you know, like they recently had like A-Track and a few other guys that like I've fans of. How was that?
It was fun. I got to do it with my good friend out here for his 40th birthday. And it was a Sunday night, so it wasn't crazy, but, you know, it's definitely a nice place. And they're kind of trying to do the Vegas vibe there. It's funny, though, when I travel to other cities, and they're kind of trying to do the bottle service thing, it's just, like, interesting because I'm in the heart of the bottle service thing. So it's a weird thing for me to, like, for someone to try to emulate, because it's almost like meant for a city like Vegas, where somebody saves up the whole year to come and spend $1,500 on a bottle of vodka, and, you know, it's just kind of a silly world.
Yeah. And you recently reunited with Mr. Eon for 2 reunion shows in Boston and Philly. How were those?
They were so much fun because they were like the Antichrist of what I do in Vegas. And all those years we were performing when we were out, Eon was like, you know, consuming massive amounts of weed. And now he's sober, and his lungs sound like better than they ever have. So it's like all of a sudden, like, he's got all this extra lung power and like sounds better than he ever did. So it's fun to hear him sober, because I never did back in the day.
Yeah, I got to go to that Philly show, and it was awesome.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, it was kind of one that, like, I've seen Cage a few times, but I kind of never thought I'd get to see you 2 live.
Yeah, we're thinking about doing a show in September in New York with kind of like an Eastern Conference reunion show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Cage and Tame and Eon, myself. That could be fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you've had any more shows in mind, or any thought to like recording music.
Definitely shows. I think those 2 shows showed us that we both really still enjoy it. And, Eon's kind of a family man. He has a son and stuff, but I think he got a little taste of it and really enjoyed it. So I think we're going to do a show in L.A. and Vegas and the New York one. I would love to go out with like a bigger group or something, out to Europe or something. I think that would really be fun. As far as recording, I still got beats. It's all about whether he wants to do it.
And are there any music? Am I right on? It's called OG House.
Yep, OG House. It's like this new project I completed with all these golden era rappers. I mean, I literally have like 22 songs done. Like everyone from Ice Dog or the Tough Crew to Ghostface Killer to Large Professor, Nori, the Artifacts, OC, MC Search, Schoolie D, EST. I mean, really, I just really went out there and it's kind of them rhyming over my newer production, club kind of up-tempo stuff. So I called it OG House because like they're the OGs, and then it's like the house music. But it's not really like EDM house, or if you think it's more like soulful stuff, just up tempo, 120 beats per minute instead of 100. I just felt like, why am I going to do a boom bap album with all these guys when we're kind of all out of our prime in that aspect? Like, am I going to really make a song with MC8 that's better than Compton's Most Wanted? Like, I don't think so.
And that's
So I just tried to do something different. I don't think there's really a home for it. I don't think the masses really care about golden era rappers rhyming over house stuff, but I just kind of did it as a vanity project, just to say I worked with these guys. These are all the guys I idolized growing up. And it was a really good experience. Like, I recorded about 5 of them at my crib. And the other ones would just send me the vocals, but like it was all love. Like, these guys couldn't have been cooler. I had Bushwick Bill at my crib and Talib Kweli, Super Lover C, MC8. Just, it was a lot of fun.
Wow. And that you released that, or that's coming out?
I've been putting out little singles / EPs, like where I'll put out the main version and then have like 3 remixes. So far I put out one with a song together with Grand Poobah and Chub Rock, and then Large Professor, and I'm about to put out the Ghostface single in like a week. So far just 3 singles off of it, but I'll release it as a whole project eventually.
Nice. I was wondering, you said you had beats. I was wondering, do you have much like unreleased stuff from, those like Eastern Conference years and stuff?
Not much. A lot of them are on DAT tapes and reel-to-reels. Some stuff that's like different versions of stuff that came out. It might have had a different beat or, a different verse, but not like a lot of songs that didn't come out. I mean, I'm sure I do, but like, I'd really have to go in and find some studio that could transfer stuff, which I want to do eventually.
And could you would you like to plug where people can find you, music and stuff?
Yeah, my SoundCloud is just DJ Mighty My. That's most of my handles for my stuff. All the OG House stuff is on my SoundCloud. I just did a Diplo and Friends mix for the BBC, also on my SoundCloud. I think that would be cool for people to check out, because I kind of took old school hip hop beats and put like new acapellas over them and vice versa. My friend John Schechter, who I mentioned before, who founded The Source, we also did these golden era hip hop shows on Shade 45 on Sirius, and those you can download from my SoundCloud also. They're pretty cool. So yeah, I'd say SoundCloud for most of my music stuff, and then I'm just on the usual Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
And is there anything else you would like to say?
I guess just thank you, man, for having me, and just shout out all the Eastern Conference fans throughout the years. It's still surreal to me that Dion and I were able to do what we did. We were really just fans that were had given the confidence to do it on the night we went to go see the Beastie Boys at the Spectrum. That kind of gave young white kids this belief that maybe I could be more than a fan, for better or for worse.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Thank you very much for doing this.
For sure. Just send me the link when you put it up.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
All right, thanks, man.
Okay, brother. Be good.
Have a good night.